Howdy, 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 gang, and welcome to Why You Should Play RuneQuest from Chaosium Inc. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, coming to you from the rather chilly Duct Tape Studios. This is the first episode of a brand new monthly series that I'm rolling out here in 2023, where I'll take an individual role-playing game system and discuss what I think makes it exceptional, why I believe it'll provide for exciting and fun adventures at your game table, why I feel you should be playing it. Now, these aren't some great deep dives into every part of the mechanics or every aspect of the game world, but I do want to spend about 10, maybe 15 minutes talking about why I feel these role-playing games stand out and really deserve your attention. First off, RuneQuest from Chaosium Inc. This is one of the most venerable role-playing games that are out there, one of the first. So if you are not overly familiar with RuneQuest, it is a Bronze Age fantasy role-playing game, which is really heavily influenced by mythology. Not necessarily Earth's mythology of our past, but its own mythology. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we take a peek through. Now, there are four things that I really think stand out and make RuneQuest far, far different than any other role-playing game out there. And one of the first things I'll talk about is the characters, the player characters and character creation. There's a sense of community with the player character. So they have family, they have a clan, they have a tribe, they've got a cult. The word cult is not derogatory in RuneQuest. It's essentially the deity that that player character worships. So we have relationships that are being built in the character creation. It's not unusual to have a group of adventurers who in the past were adversaries. They may have been enemies, but now they're allies because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, sort of thing. Something else, we don't have character classes in RuneQuest. So you can play the exact sort of character you want to play, and you can make them specialized in magic or martial class, but you're not locked into any particular sort of character. So if you want to make them very well-rounded, by all means, you certainly can. Now, RuneQuest is the granddaddy of what's known as the basic role-playing system, which pretty much powers just about every role-playing game from Chaosium Inc., except for, incredibly enough, Greg Stafford's other famous role-playing game, Pendragon, which uses a D20, not percentile dice. But in RuneQuest, you have these percentile dice. So you'll have skills, and what you're looking to do is roll equal to or lower than that skill using D100. And of course, you'll utilize other gaming dice for damage and other things, but the core mechanic is all based upon a D100. Something else that's very interesting is you'll have an occupation, but this does not lock you into any particular sort of character. So this is really essentially a background that will affect your skills, which skills you have. But of course, you'll have some leeway as well to invest points into skills that are not part of your occupation. Speaking of skills, this is a role-playing game where your skills improve the more you use them. So if you're creating a particular sort of character, but that's not how you play them, that character will eventually reflect your approach to the character. It's very unique, it's very interesting, and it's something that I've always loved about the basic role-playing system itself. So as I mentioned, you've got a real sense of community with the player characters. Now, the game world itself is hugely detailed. because Greg Stafford invested over 40 years into RuneQuest and the world of Glorantha. And Glorantha has got to be probably the greatest living, breathing role-playing game setting that I have ever encountered. Does that mean you're locked into playing in Glorantha? I gotta be honest, not really. It's pretty much baked into the game, but there have been editions of RuneQuest. In fact, there was an edition from Avalon Hill years and years ago, which completely did away with Glorantha, and it was set in kind of a standard epic fantasy setting. But that is not necessarily the case for RuneQuest. But as I'm pointing out, you can use these mechanics, you can use this magic system essentially anywhere you would like. But to be honest, if I were going to be running RuneQuest, I would certainly run it in Glorantha. So I remember picking up the original 1-inch deep box set back in 1980. And there were a few things that really struck me right away, because I think at that point, the only role-playing game that I was familiar with was Dungeons and Dragons and maybe Traveler. I don't recall if I experienced Traveler before I did RuneQuest or if RuneQuest came before Traveler. But there were things that, for one, the percentile system, I was like, whoa, that's different. Combat, you don't have armor class, you have hit location. Each location has a certain number of hit points. You have armor location that provides protection to those body parts, not making it more difficult for you to hit somebody, but making it more difficult for you to harm somebody. But combat is very lethal. It is quick, dirty, and lethal. So it's not unusual for player characters to be maimed, to lose a limb in combat. Now, of course, there's powerful healing magic as well, but you may not always have access to that. So not only does this make for rather exciting and unique combat encounters, it also will lead your players to look for other solutions rather than the sharp end of a sword, which I especially like. So this game world, magic is really baked into it. This is not a place where magic is, mysterious, or I guess I should really say it's not a game world where only a few people have access to magic. Really, everyone in the world of Glorantha has access to magic and different types of magic. And one of the most important types is rune magic. And it's really the manifestation of the various deities' power on Glorantha. And the player characters have a far more personal relationship with the gods and goddesses than you see in other traditional kind of European styled high fantasy role-playing games. And it is really, really cool. So of course, this is not a Vancian magic system. So it's not where the player character casts a spell and then they don't have access to that again until they've rested or the next day, what have you. We've got the sort of magic spells that we're used to kind of seeing, or, the healing magic and combat magic, attack magic that does damage. But we also have various different buffs and rituals that you won't normally see in other role-playing games, because once again, this really, there is such a sense of community in RuneQuest for the player characters. The player characters, of course, are looking to better themselves. Glorantha's version of Ragnarok is on the horizon, and the player characters are looking to become legendary heroes to take part in that war that's coming. But I also should point out that there's kind of a misconception for some people that only big epic stories are told in RuneQuest, that it's just the player characters are trying to become essentially like demigods. That is not the case. Of course, you can have big epic campaigns and adventures where, world-changing adventures, but you can also have very, very small and personal adventures as well. Also, speaking of community, of course, Chaosium Inc. releases a good amount of content for RuneQuest. Not as much as we see for, say, Call of Cthulhu, but you don't really see RuneQuest getting the short shift. But there is also the Johnstown Compendium over at Drive-Thru RPG with tons of great third-party content, especially adventures and campaigns. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Plus, the actual gamer community for RuneQuest is just really friendly, really, there isn't the sort of drama that you sometimes see from other role-playing game communities. I'm not naming names. I'm just saying that the people tend to be very, very friendly, very, very helpful as well. So there's one last thing I do want to mention about RuneQuest that I think really puts it above and beyond many other role-playing games that are out there, and that is actually its starter set. And you can, of course, check out my reviews of the starter set as well as the core rulebook, which is part of a slipcase set that you can purchase as well. That includes the bestiary and a game master screen. But this starter set is just packed with gaming content. And you've got loads of pre-gens. Usually pre-generated characters, you get maybe 4 or 5. If I remember off the top of my head, I think there's like 15. All different sorts of characters. You get a rule book, which essentially, these rules you can run any RuneQuest adventure with. So you don't necessarily have to have the big hardcover core rulebook or a PDF of the core rulebook, because a lot of that is dedicated to the background, the game world, as well as magic. You don't have all the magic located in this book here, but there's plenty. And one nice aspect of Chaosium Inc. also is that they've been releasing these starter sets that, as I just mentioned, you can use as your core rules for other items that come out. And I think that's fantastic. Also get a set of dice. This is just packed with role-playing game goodness. There's a solo book to basically teach you the rules. So if you've got a group that you'd like to introduce to RuneQuest, not only can the game master play this solo quest, but you can pass this book around to all the other players. And by the time they're finished with it, they'll not only have a very good feel for the game world, but how these game mechanics work as well. Then we get an adventure book that is not just one individual introductory adventure, but it actually has a few adventures in there that are going to take multiple sessions for you to complete. I have said it in my review. I said it in my favorite role-playing game video for games I reviewed in 2022, that this is fantastic. This also is one of the things that places RuneQuest head and shoulders above other role-playing games that are out there. And that is this absolutely fantastic starter set that is all you need to get started playing in the world of Glorantha. I have always felt that RuneQuest is just a stunning achievement in the world of role-playing games. All that devotion, all that dedication, all that love that Greg Stafford poured into RuneQuest and the world of Glorantha really does shine through. This latest edition is absolutely fantastic. You can check out my reviews of the various releases. But the thing is, this is an exciting game system. I think some folks out there have this impression that you're not going to have as exciting and fun and epic adventures in RuneQuest as you would other fantasy role-playing games because it doesn't take place in that prototypical European-inspired fantasy world. That is absolutely not the case at all. I love the fact that your player characters have a bond, they have a community, they have family, and it really comes through in the game itself. Mechanically, some folks over the years I've heard tell me that, oh, D100's tough to figure out. I've never found that to be the case. In fact, I've always thought that the percentile dice system is pretty intuitive and easy to wrap your head around. There is just so much goodness just bubbling out of RuneQuest that it really does deserve a place on your gaming table. And now you know why you should play RuneQuest from Chaosium Inc. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this first episode of Why You Should Play, but it'll also inform you when my live stream, The Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Do want to mention, it is New Year's Day, so Happy New Year to all of you out there. And till I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, hey, you're still here. That's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.